I remember the exact moment the fever took hold. It was the middle of a Tuesday, late May, and the sunlight that spilled through the blinds felt more like a spotlight than warmth. I had been dragging myself through exhaustion for days, blaming stress or allergies, but that morning my legs buckled on the way to the bathroom. I lay on the cold tile for 15 minutes, my forehead pressed against the grout, listening to the sound of Marissa's laughter downstairs. She didn't come when I called her name, though I could hear her heels clicking, her voice carrying into the phone as she told someone. Yeah, he's still being dramatic. Probably a man cold. I wasn't surprised. That's just how she'd been lately. Detached. Bored. Too pretty and far too polished to be saddled with a husband who wasn't pulling his weight emotionally. That's what she said the last time we fought. You're here, but you're not present. I wanted to scream at her then, tell her that being sick isn't the same as being selfish, but my voice barely reached above a whisper. The woman I'd married had once held my hand through a job loss and a near-nervous breakdown. Now she rolled her eyes when I asked her to pass the thermometer. It wasn't until the next day that I was admitted to the hospital. The doctors suspected a bacterial infection, possibly pneumonia, and my white blood cell count was through the roof. I remember the sterile brightness of the ER room, the beep of machines, the chill of the floor going in. But what I remember most clearly was the sight of Marissa sitting in the corner, texting. She never looked up, not even when the nurse explained that my condition could become critical without immediate treatment. My mother came by for 20 minutes, brought some pastries she knew I couldn't eat, and kissed my cheek with all the emotional warmth of a weather forecast. You'll be fine, she said, waving it off. You're strong. And anyway, we've already booked our trip to Greece, so don't go giving us a reason to cancel. I didn't respond. I couldn't. My throat was swollen and raw. My chest ached with each breath. And even if I had the words, what could I say? Please stay? I'd never begged a day in my life. I wasn't about to start now. Marissa told me she'd made up her mind. The tickets were non-refundable, and Aaron, my younger brother, was already counting on the trip. That's how she phrased it, like they were a team, like I was the inconvenient third party in their plans. Look, she said, adjusting her sunglasses indoors like she was on a runway. You can't hold me back with your illness. You know how long I've wanted this vacation. Besides, I'll have a lot more fun with Aaron anyway. That last part wasn't muttered or whispered. It was tossed at me like a dart. There was no flinch, no regret, just that maddening smile she'd perfected when she thought she was being clever. I blinked at her, stunned. My brother? The same guy who used to borrow money from me and forget to pay it back? The one who spent more time curating his abs than building any real career? She was leaving with him? And none of them, none, seemed to think anything was wrong with that. When they left, I was alone for the first time in weeks. Not just physically, spiritually alone. The kind of aloneness that makes you question your own worth. I stared at the ceiling of my hospital room, tracing the cracks in the paint with my eyes, while fever dreams clawed at the corners of my mind. The nurses came and went. Machines beeped. Time passed in strange, elastic stretches. But there was one constant, Elsa, my housekeeper. She wasn't even required to be there, but she came every evening after her shifts, sat with me in silence, or read out loud from whatever book was on the nightstand. She brought me water when I couldn't lift my hand. She adjusted the blankets, cooled my forehead, and reminded me, through action, not words, that I mattered, that someone still cared if I lived or died. I never expected that kind of grace from her, not because she wasn't capable, but because I had been too distracted, too self-absorbed, to see who she really was before all this happened. The day my fever finally broke, Elsa was the one who noticed it first. I remember blinking awake to the sound of her voice, quiet and steady. Mr. Daniel, your skin is cooler today. That's good, yes. I could barely nod, but I felt tears sting my eyes. It wasn't just the fever breaking. It was the dam of emotion I'd held back for weeks, months, maybe years. The weight of being taken for granted, of being used and left behind, hit me like a wave. My family was off in Europe, drinking wine and watching sunsets over whitewashed rooftops, while I fought for my life alone. Well, not alone. Not entirely. And that distinction mattered more than I could have imagined. By the following week, I was stable enough to leave the hospital, but I didn't go home. I checked into a private recovery villa, something remote and quiet, where no one could just pop in unannounced. That's when I called my lawyer. I want to change my will, I told him flatly. He asked if I was sure. I said nothing for a long time. Then I repeated it. I'm certain. My wife would get nothing. My brother, nothing. Not even my mother, who had the nerve to post a throwback photo of us on Facebook with the caption, "Pray for my strong son," as if she'd ever acted like I was hers to begin with. Every single one of them had made their priorities clear. And now, so would I? The thing about betrayal is that it never feels cinematic when it happens. There's no dramatic music cue, no thunderstorm rolling in at just the right moment. It happens in the silence, in the way someone shrugs when you're struggling to breathe, or in the casual tone they use to let you know you're not their priority. I spent those long hours in the recovery villa trying to piece together how I got here. How the woman I once trusted to carry my name now carried a suitcase to Greece, smiling next to my brother like she was stepping into a life she'd secretly rehearsed. I lay in bed with my chest still tender from infection, watching videos of them zip-lining over coastal cliffs and dancing on a rooftop bar. Marissa's voice rang out clear in one clip, shouting, "Opa," as she threw back a shot of ouzo. Right behind her, Aaron smirked into the camera, shirt unbuttoned to his navel like he was the goddamn star of a cologne commercial. The comments were full of heart emojis and fake friends saying how cute they were together. I stared at the screen until my jaw locked tight, until the edges of the video blurred into a red haze. She had said the words so easily, too. "You can't hold me back with your illness." That was her out. That was her excuse to rewrite history and play the role of the brave, unbothered wife living her best life while her husband decayed in a hospital bed. But that next part, "I'd have a lot more fun with your younger brother," that wasn't just selfish. That was surgical. It was meant to cut. And it did. Because deep down, I knew she'd probably been flirting with Aaron for months. Maybe longer. Family gatherings had started to feel off. Too many shared glances, too many inside jokes I wasn't part of. I once walked into the kitchen and found them laughing with their heads too close together. When I asked what was funny, they both went silent. I had chalked it up to paranoia. I didn't want to be the jealous, insecure husband. But looking back, I wasn't paranoid. I was just trying not to see the truth. I didn't even get a goodbye when they left. Not a hug, not a word of reassurance. I found a note on the kitchen counter when I got home from the hospital. "We're off to Greece. Call if you need anything, though you'll be fine. M." That's how lightly she took my health. An afterthought scribbled between a flight confirmation and a passport. Aaron didn't even bother to text. My own brother. The same guy I bailed out of debt when he was drowning in credit card bills. The same guy who crashed on my couch for 6 months after his second DUI. I used to make excuses for him. Said he was just figuring things out. But all he figured out was that I was an easy mark. And now, with my wife on his arm and the Aegean Sea behind them, he didn't even have to pretend anymore. It was Elsa who sat beside me as I watched those videos. She didn't say much, just placed a quiet hand on my arm and let me feel it all. I didn't need comfort in that moment. I needed clarity. And I got it. The kind you only find after loss. My fever might have broken, but something else had cracked wide open inside me, my tolerance. My willingness to carry people who wouldn't even bend down to lift me up. I told Elsa that night, "They've made their choice." She nodded, slow and understanding, and whispered, "So make yours." It was the simplest advice I'd ever received. And the most powerful. The next morning, I called my lawyer again. This time I dictated the exact terms. Marissa was to be removed from everything. Our joint accounts, the life insurance, the house deed. Aaron would get no inheritance, no shares in the company, not even my watch collection he once begged me to save for him. My mother, father, cousins, anyone who boarded that plane or stayed silent, were all cut out. In their place, I named Elsa as the sole beneficiary. Every property, every investment, every stock I'd spent 30 years accumulating. She protested at first, said it wasn't right, that she was just a housekeeper. But she wasn't. Not to me. Not anymore. She was the only one who chose me when there was nothing to gain. The lawyer paused before finalizing the paperwork. "Are you sure this is what you want? These are big moves, Daniel." I looked him in the eye and said, So was walking away from someone on their deathbed. That shut him up. He signed what he needed to sign, stamped what needed to be stamped, and within hours, my life was legally restructured. Not out of spite, but out of truth. It felt clean, like wiping down a table after a long, messy meal. No more crumbs left behind. No more pretending. That night, I wrote a letter. Not to any one person, but to all of them. To those who left me, it began. I poured every ounce of my disappointment into those pages. I reminded them that love isn't proven in perfect moments, but in painful ones. That family isn't built on blood or holidays, but on who shows up when no one else does. I explained how I watched them from my hospital bed, smiling into cameras while I begged the nurse for water. How they laughed while I lay half-conscious with a machine breathing for me. I ended the letter with a single sentence. You are no longer part of my life or my legacy. Then I signed it, sealed it, and left it on the kitchen counter for when they returned. My final act of closure. They came back with tans, souvenirs, and a trail of curated Instagram memories like breadcrumbs leading back to a lie. The house was silent when they walked in. No welcome home, no music, no scent of dinner in the air. Marissa was the first through the door, rolling her designer suitcase across the floor with a smirk on her face, still wearing her oversized sunglasses like she was descending the steps of a yacht instead of entering the home of the man she left behind. Aaron followed right behind her, laughing at something on his phone, probably a comment under one of their couple-style photos. My mother trailed in last, holding a paper bag from the Athens airport and asking aloud if anyone had watered her plants while she was gone. None of them noticed the envelope on the kitchen island right away. They were too busy living in the echo of their own delusion, believing that life would simply resume, that I'd be waiting like a loyal dog, grateful for scraps of attention, too broken to be angry. It was Elsa who left the letter there, just as I instructed. The white envelope stood out against the dark granite countertop, my name elegantly signed in blue ink. To those who left me. At first, no one touched it. It sat there like a silent accusation, radiating something cold and undeniable. Marissa finally picked it up, turning it over like she expected it to bite. I imagined her expression as she read the first line. Probably amusement at first, then confusion, then the slow, dawning horror that comes when the ground starts to shift under your feet and you realize you no longer hold any power. She didn't say anything at first. She just placed the letter back down, her fingers trembling slightly. That was when I knew it had landed exactly as it should have. There was no dramatic scream, no sobbing, just silence, and that was so much louder. They tried to call me almost immediately. Marissa first, then Aaron, then my mother in rapid succession. My phone didn't ring once. All of it was routed through James, my assistant, who I'd instructed explicitly to screen everything. Mr. Daniel is unavailable, he said each time, his voice calm, measured. He has requested no contact from any family members at this time. When they pressed for details, he repeated the line. When they tried guilt, he held firm. He's made his wishes clear. It didn't take long before the text started. Pages of them. Marissa's began with fake concern. Are you okay? This isn't like you. Then came the accusations. You're being dramatic. Then desperation. We need to talk. Please. Aaron was more direct. What the hell is this? You cut me off? After everything I've done for you. That part made me laugh. He had done nothing for me. Only ever taken. I didn't respond. Not once. Silence was my revenge. I watched from a distance as they unraveled. I imagined them pacing the living room, rereading the letter, wondering how serious I was. Wondering if they could spin it back into their favor. But it was done. The will had been changed. The accounts had been separated. The power of attorney and all relevant documents had been locked into legal armor. Elsa had been fully briefed and protected. They couldn't touch a damn thing anymore. And that realization hit them harder than any words I could have spoken. They weren't grieving me. They were grieving their access to my wealth, to my generosity, to the lifestyle I had subsidized for far too long. Then came the social media circus. Marissa posted first, a photo of us from 5 years ago, standing arm in arm at my company's holiday gala. Me in a tuxedo, her in a red silk dress she picked out just to impress the bored wives. The caption read, "Sometimes people change when they're sick." They push away those who love them most, praying for healing and clarity. Within an hour, the comment section filled with sympathy. You're such a strong woman. He'll realize what he lost. You deserve better. I didn't flinch. Let them perform. Let them build a stage out of their guilt and act like they were the victims. I wasn't going to play a part in their theater anymore. Aaron followed up with a cryptic story post, just a black background with the words, "Some people forget who was there for them." My mother wrote a paragraph-long Facebook status about family being complicated and holding space for forgiveness. That was her brand, vague emotional manipulation dressed up as wisdom. They didn't mention the Greece trip. They didn't mention the photos or the comments or the very public displays of disrespect. They wanted to rewrite the story with them as the grieving, wronged parties, and me as the irrational, unstable man who had simply snapped. But the truth was simple. I hadn't snapped. I had woken up. Elsa called me later that week to check in. She told me they had shown up at the house again. Angry, loud, demanding answers. She stood her ground. Told them I wasn't there, that the house was under legal transition, that any further attempts to intimidate her would be met with law enforcement. I told her she didn't have to deal with that she could stay somewhere else for a while if she needed space. But she declined. "This house is mine now," she said softly, "and I won't let them bully me out of it." There was a strength in her voice I hadn't heard before. A quiet, earned power. It made me proud. I spent those days in the villa watching the sky change color over the hills, reading books I hadn't touched in years, sleeping deeply for the first time in months. It wasn't peace, not yet, but it was something close. I didn't miss them. That's what surprised me most. There was no aching hole, no sense of loss. Just relief. Like stepping out of a tight, itchy sweater you'd been convinced was all you had to wear. I thought I'd feel guilt. I didn't. I thought I'd feel sorrow. I didn't. What I felt was something I hadn't known I was missing, freedom. They didn't take the silence well. At first, I thought they might get bored and move on, find some other drama to dive into. But no. People like Marissa and Aaron don't just walk away when the gravy train pulls into the station and locks its doors. They circle. They strategize. And when their names don't get them what they want, they get loud. It started with the calls again. My assistant James told me the frequency had doubled. 23 missed calls in a day, most of them from Marissa. She didn't even bother disguising her desperation anymore. Her voicemails ranged from pleading, "Please, Daniel, I just want to talk. We need to fix this," to accusatory, "You're acting like a dictator. You're sick. This isn't you." The gall of it. For months she treated me like a burden, and now that I'd taken back control, suddenly I was the problem? James handled it all with grace. He kept to the script, exactly as I'd instructed. "Mr. Daniel has no comment at this time. He does not wish to engage." Short, cold, unambiguous. I told him not to forward me any messages, not to paraphrase or summarize. I didn't want to know what they were saying. Their words had lost all meaning. And in that silence, I found strength. The kind of strength that comes from finally choosing yourself after decades of choosing others. I wasn't being cruel. I was being clear. There's a difference, and I'd spent too long pretending there wasn't. But clarity doesn't sit well with entitled people. When the calls didn't work, they tried proximity. Aaron showed up at my recovery villa under the pretense of just wanting to see if I was okay. He brought takeout from my favorite Thai place, as if Pad Ki Mao could erase months of betrayal. The security staff didn't even let him pass the gate. He caused a scene, yelling that he was my brother, that I'd regret, cutting off the only people who really care about me. The only people. That part stuck with me, because Aaron really believed that. He believed that proximity equals love, that just showing up when it's convenient earns you loyalty. I used to believe that too, until I lay in that hospital bed, dying, while they drank cocktails on a yacht. Later that week, Marissa tried the same trick, different approach. She showed up at James's office, unannounced, pretending to be there for a casual check-in. He met her in the lobby, clipboard in hand, completely unfazed. She started with a smile, then quickly turned sharp. "Do you think this is funny?" she asked him. "Keeping a man isolated like this? It's abuse." James didn't blink. "Ma'am, Daniel is of sound mind. This was all his decision. If you have legal concerns, I suggest you bring them through your attorney." She scoffed and walked out, but not before threatening to go public with her side of the story. As if that would scare us. Let her post. Let her whine. The truth didn't need defending. It was already documented, notarized, and witnessed. And post she did. Oh, she posted a video, actually, her sitting in her car, makeup smudged just slightly, the camera angled to catch the sunlight hitting her face in just the right way. I never wanted to speak on this, she began, her voice shaking with rehearsed fragility. But when someone you love is being manipulated, when they're sick and you're cut out of their life for asking questions, it's heartbreaking. She dabbed her eyes with a tissue that looked suspiciously unused. I stood by him for years. And now I'm being punished for taking a break. For one trip. The comments section flooded with sympathy, at first. But then, someone reposted screenshots of her and Aaron from Greece. The poolside selfies. The champagne toasts. One video showed them dancing a little too close. Captioned, "Married who? We're living life." That one got reshared by a gossip page with over 200,000 followers. Suddenly, the tide turned. People began asking the real questions. Wait, isn't that her husband's brother? Wasn't her husband in the ICU? She looks real heartbroken in Santorini. The mask cracked. The likes slowed. The fake sympathy dried up. She tried to delete the video, but by then it had already made its way across every corner of the internet. I didn't celebrate it. I wasn't watching like a villain, rubbing my hands together. But I won't lie, it felt like justice. Not the petty kind. The quiet kind. The kind that doesn't need to announce itself. It just arrives and settles in. My mother, not one to be left behind in a family scandal, jumped into the fray with a Facebook post so dense it read like a sermon. She spoke of forgiveness, of the devil working overtime, of how sons are not meant to cast their mothers out. She even quoted scripture, conveniently skipping over any verse that might call out abandonment or favoritism. She tagged me in it. James untagged me. Then we both blocked her. I didn't need to explain myself to a woman who once told me, "You're strong. You'll be fine," before boarding a plane to Europe while I was hospitalized. A woman who sent me one dry text, asterisk, "Keep us updated," asterisk, and never followed up again. She hadn't earned my forgiveness. She hadn't even earned my time. Elsa, on the other hand, stayed steady through it all. She fielded a few journalists who came sniffing around the house, cameras in hand, hoping for a soundbite. She never gave them anything. "He's resting. That's all you need to know." That was her line, over and over. And when one particularly persistent reporter tried to bribe her with a gift card and a promise of anonymity, she looked him in the eye and said, "You're lucky I don't call the police." That's when I realized I hadn't just left everything to her because she was kind. I did it because she was capable, because she had spine, and because, unlike everyone else, she never needed anything from me to be loyal. I spent the rest of the week walking the gardens outside the villa, letting the late summer air fill my lungs. I felt stronger every day, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually. I had lost a lot: trust, time, illusions. But what I gained was far more precious: clarity. I didn't need to yell to be heard. I didn't need to defend myself to people who had already made their choice. All I had to do was live. Fully. Without them. It all came to a head 2 weeks later. I should have expected it, honestly. When people like Marissa and Aaron lose control, they don't fade away. They flare. They burn hot and messy, setting fire to everything in hopes they can still stand in the smoke and call themselves survivors. That's what this was now. Not grief, not confusion, not even a fight for redemption. It was a full-blown tantrum from people who had built their identities around my patience and were now spiraling in its absence. It started at my company's quarterly gala, an event I was still invited to out of respect, even though I hadn't planned to attend. My name was on the foundation banners, my face still on the website. I'd told the board I was stepping back for now, but somehow word leaked that I might make a quiet appearance. That's all it took. Marissa showed up in a fitted black dress, the kind she used to wear on our anniversary dinners, before she forgot we had anniversaries. Her makeup was dramatic, almost funereal, and she walked in like a widow at a publicity shoot. Aaron was right behind her, wearing one of my old suits. That part hit harder than I expected. I'd given it to him years ago, tailored it for his graduation dinner. Seeing him wear it now, strutting in like he'd earned any part of my legacy, made something cold shift inside me. I didn't speak. I didn't even make eye contact. I stood on the balcony with James, watching the whole thing unfold from above. "They don't know you're here," James whispered. "Want to leave?" I shook my head. No. I wanted them to see that I didn't flinch. The confrontation didn't take long. Marissa made her way through the crowd with the grace of a woman used to being the center of attention, smiling just enough to keep it social. But when she reached the base of the staircase and spotted me, her face cracked. The smile disappeared. Her voice rang out, high and sharp, "Daniel," and the room stilled. Not in a dramatic, movie kind of way. More in a collective, oh no sort of silence. I didn't move. Didn't answer. I just took a sip of my drink and waited. She came up the steps, dragging Aaron with her, and the moment they reached me, her voice dropped into something meant to sound wounded. "You're really going to ignore me? Here? In front of all these people?" I looked her dead in the eye and said, "You ignored me while I almost died. This seems fair." That was the moment the mask shattered completely. Her eyes narrowed, her jaw tensed, and all that false humility she'd been cultivating for the cameras evaporated. "You are mentally unwell," she hissed. "Everyone sees it. This whole thing you're doing. Rewriting your will, isolating yourself, acting like some martyr, it's insane." I let her finish. I wanted her to dig her own grave with every word. Aaron chimed in then, as if the suit gave him permission to speak. "You're acting like a victim, Daniel. We've all been there for you. You're just too selfish to see it." That part actually made me laugh, out loud. "Were you there when the doctors couldn't stabilize my vitals? Were you there when I needed someone to hold my hand at 3 a.m.? I asked. Or were you zip-lining over the Aegean Sea with my wife?" A few guests gasped. Someone actually dropped a glass. And in that moment, I knew I had taken back every ounce of power they'd drained from me. Marissa looked like she might slap me, but instead, she turned to the crowd. "He's lost it," she said. "He's unstable. This is elder abuse." That would have been comical if it weren't so desperate. I was 52, not ancient, and still sharp enough to see through every game she was playing. I turned to James. "Make sure security knows they're no longer welcome at any company events." He nodded. Just like that. The door they used to slip through, social capital, my name, my influence, was slammed shut. Publicly. Irrevocably. The fallout was immediate. Within an hour, clips from the confrontation started popping up online. Someone had recorded the whole thing. Of course they had. It made its way to Reddit, then TikTok, then a few gossip blogs. Headlines ranged from CEO confronts estranged wife and brother at gala to scandal at the Skyline Foundation. The real story behind the inheritance feud. I didn't care about the noise. Let them talk. Let them speculate. The truth had already been lived, documented, signed, sealed. But what did matter was how the public turned. People saw through Marissa's fake tears now. They remembered the Grease photos. They dug up old tweets. One particularly viral post stitched a video of her gala meltdown with a photo of her and Aaron clinking wine glasses in Mykonos. Caption, "This you?" Marissa's sympathy tour was over. Brands she used to collab with quietly pulled her from campaigns. Aaron's little fitness business got review bombed into oblivion. Even my mother's circle started to shrink. Ladies who once praised her Sunday roasts now muttered about family shame behind her back. I didn't orchestrate any of it. I didn't need to. The truth had its own gravity. All I did was let it exist, unbothered. The rest happened because people can smell authenticity, and they can smell desperation even faster. Elsa called me again a few nights after the gala. "They came to the house again," she said, her voice tired but not shaken. "This time with someone they called a mediator. I told them they could speak to my lawyer, just like you said." I thanked her. She paused, then added, "I hope you don't regret giving me everything." That stopped me. Not because I did regret it, but because I knew what it cost her to ask. "Elsa," I said, "you were the only one who stayed. You were there when no one else was. You earned it, not because you asked, but because you never did." She didn't respond right away, but I could hear her exhale, a soft sound of release. Like she'd been holding that question in her chest for weeks and finally let it go. I thought the fallout might bring me some twisted sense of satisfaction, but it didn't. It brought me stillness. Not peace, Not yet. But something quieter than rage. Something cleaner. I spent my mornings walking the coast near the villa, watching the waves lap at the shore, feeling the sun warm my back. I read again. I journaled. I learned how to cook a few simple meals. I even took up painting, though I never showed anyone my work. It wasn't about distraction. It was about rediscovery. Who was I without them? Without their demands, their needs, their noise? The answer was surprising. I was better. It wasn't a single moment that brought the peace. It came gradually, like light filtering in through thick curtains, little by little until the room began to shift from darkness to something livable. There were days I still woke up expecting to be angry. I'd open my eyes braced for bitterness, for that old familiar tightness in my chest. But slowly, I realized that weight had lifted. Not completely, not forever, but enough that I could breathe. Enough that I didn't carry them with me into every sunrise. That was what healing looked like for me. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, but release. The quiet knowledge that I no longer owed anyone an explanation for my survival. There were still attempts, of course. You don't cut people off from your life and legacy and expect them to vanish without a fight. There was a letter from my mother, handwritten this time, as if ink could do what her words never managed to. She wrote about her childhood, about sacrifice, about how families go through phases of silence. She didn't apologize. Not once. The closest she came was saying, "I know I could have been more present." That wasn't an apology. That was a weather report. Detached. Impersonal. Like she was describing a missed appointment, not a son she abandoned in a hospital bed. I folded the letter neatly and placed it in a drawer I didn't plan to open again. I didn't burn it. I wasn't angry. I just no longer needed it. Aaron didn't write. He sent a video message. Of course he did. Sitting shirtless on some beach, shades on, tone casual. "Yo man," he said, like we were back in high school. "Look, everything got out of hand. But we're family. You and me, bro. You know I never meant to hurt you." He paused, scratched his head, then added, "Maybe we both made some mistakes." That's when I hit delete. There was no both. There was him, there was me, and there was a woman I once thought I'd grow old with who saw my near death as a vacation window. No amount of sand or soft lighting would rewrite that history. Marissa's last attempt was a care package. One of those curated boxes with herbal teas, scented candles, and a note that read, "Self-care is so important. Wishing you light and healing." No signature. No explanation. Just that, some hollow gesture that probably doubled as a tax write-off. I didn't even open the candle. I left the box in the hallway outside the villa, told the staff to donate it. I didn't need her pity. I didn't need her guilt. I needed her gone. And finally, mercifully, she was. Elsa visited on Sundays. She always brought something warm, soup, fresh bread, banana muffins if she had time. She never stayed too long, never asked for anything. Just sat with me on the patio, sipping tea and letting the silence stretch comfortably between us. We talked sometimes about books or memories from the house, or even dreams she used to have when she was younger but never got around to chasing. She told me she used to want to open a small shelter for elderly women, somewhere safe and clean and full of flowers. "Maybe someday," she said, almost shyly. I looked at her then, really looked at her, and said, "Let's make that happen." She blinked, confused. "You'd fund it." I smiled. "I'd co-found it. With you." For a second, she didn't say anything. Then she nodded slowly. Not grateful, not surprised, just steady, like she'd been waiting for the chance to build something real. We started laying the groundwork the next week. Lawyers, land deeds, nonprofit filings. For the first time in years, I felt energized by a project, not because it would earn me accolades or money, but because it felt right. It felt like a legacy worth leaving, one rooted in service, in care, in quiet acts of loyalty. Elsa named it the Second Bloom Project. I liked that. There was poetry in it. Not all stories bloomed the first time around. Some need loss. Some need winter. Some need a clearing before the seed can even take hold. I didn't tell anyone in the family. They'd already lost access to that part of me. There was nothing left to explain. The will was airtight. The lawyers were on standby. And if they ever tried to contest it, which I half expected Marissa might, Elsa would have the resources and backing to protect it. She wasn't just my housekeeper anymore. She was my partner, my confidant, my proof that loyalty still existed outside of blood. That love, real love, was shown in moments, not declarations. The house back in the city remained under Elsa's name. She didn't want to live in the main bedroom. That's yours, she said. But I told her the truth. It's just a room now. Make it yours. She hesitated, but eventually accepted. That was important to me. Not the room, but the gesture. I wanted her to stop thinking like a guest. She had earned her place. In that home, in my life, in the story I'd spent so long letting others write for me. No more. My health improved. Slowly, but meaningfully. The doctor said I was lucky, that with the right care and rest, I'd be back to full strength. I didn't feel lucky. I felt decided. Like my body had waited for my heart to catch up, and now they were healing in tandem. I took longer walks. I read harder books. I laughed again sometimes. It wasn't loud, but it was real, and that counted for more. Sometimes I thought about writing a final letter, something to sum it all up. Not to them, but to myself. A record of how it felt to be left, to be stripped of every illusion, and still find something worth holding on to. But I didn't. I didn't need the words. I was already living the answer. If you've ever had to walk away from people you thought would be there forever, you're not alone. Sometimes, the real strength isn't in forgiveness. It's in choosing peace over pain. Would you have done what Daniel did? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful, real-life stories of betrayal, boundaries, and hard-earned healing. See you soon in the next story.